Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofrumento, and I am so very excited about today's episode and especially about today's guest and fellow entrepreneur because not only do I love the work that she does, but trust me, this is somebody who brings so many incredible different facets and angles to the table, and it just makes her a very brilliant entrepreneur. So let me introduce you to today's guest. Her name is Sara Reece. Sara is the co-founder and CEO of a company called Workmind, where her team builds operational agents that take repetitive work off the plates of franchisors and service teams. They're focused on helping brands grow smarter by layering automation into the tools that those teams already rely on. And I'll tell you what, here in 2026, everybody's going to talk about AI and all the different angles, and we certainly are as well. But Sara is at that cutting edge in such a brilliant way of building agents that actually do things for business owners and do things that make them not only more operationally sound, but of course allow us to focus on better serving our clients. So we're all in for a treat today. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Sara Reece. Hey Sara, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm super excited to be with you. This is going to be a lot of fun.
Heck yes. Well, we're not going to waste any time, Sara. You and I were having way too much fun off the air, so I'm going to put you on the spot right away. Take us beyond the bio. Who's Sara? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
So it's super fun. My life is always random. That's the best way I like to explain it to people. My family has a good joke going because they've never known what I was going to do next. The long story short is that I got into tech. And I started working as the best way of putting this is I started working with a company where they needed to get some basic chatbots going this is 7 years ago. We're using NLU technology for basic client facing qualification and validation and lead generation. And I started out and I was doing these very basic, very long, oh goodness, my brain's went on me, but just very long, drawn out workflows. And I started realizing I really liked it. It was a lot of fun. And it grew from one thing to the next. I ended up working for a company that they specialized. They led the industry for years on the latest cutting edge on how to actually build out good AI agents. And especially when the LLM market really started hitting about 2.5 years ago, they were right there. And I've watched this progress over the last 7 years from we need to have this list of intents from hundreds of intents and lots of training and hours of training data and hours of testing to working with LLMs and making things smarter and using those in the right places. So it's been a fun journey for me. It's a lot of things have been unexpected, a lot of twists and turns, but it has led to a lot of fun discovery and also a lot of good application.
Yeah, I love that overview, especially because, Sara, I know as the host of this show how so frequently it sounds like everything's linear, but of course in those moments I am willing to bet, and I just know a little bit about your past history before your entrepreneurial journey that, I mean, you said it, you've done a little bit of everything, and it probably did not feel linear in the moment, but I would imagine all of it set you up for the things that you're doing today with Workmind. So talk to us about that non-linear nature, and then looking back, how you've realized, holy cow, all the puzzle pieces came into place for what it is that I do today.
Well, and that's where a lot of this goes into is so when I started out professionally, I actually started out in journalism. And I also was a radio DJ for a while, and then I went to flight school, and I studied direct resource management. I used to do research in national parks, and then I've also worked a bunch of fun jobs. I started work when I was 6. I was working in strawberry fields as a manual laborer because my parents wouldn't give us an allowance, so we had to find ways. And I grew up in a place where that was an option for a 6-year-old to go pick strawberries and make 25 cents a quart. But what's been really fun is that all of those experiences, as random as they seem, have actually given me a lot of depth and understanding. So as we've gone into this and as we've been building up Workmind, there are things that come from all the experiences I've had on how do we do this and how do we make this better and how are we smarter about it? Because once you start going linear with it and you say, well, A equals B and B equals C, you're missing context. You're missing vital things that are going to help you succeed as a business and as an entrepreneur and as a person in general. I think a lot of people really are not as linear as they like to try and come across. And I think if we can embrace that side of ourselves and we can say, hey, we've got these amazing aspects. I know as we've been going into things with Workmind, I've had times where I legit I had a conversation where we were running some stuff with the engineering department, and I made a recommendation, and the engineers kind of looked at me like, well, that's really smart. Where did that come from? Like, well, when I was 17 and I was working detasseling, which is where you pull corn stalks off of corns, I'm like, we kind of use this concept, and I think if we can tweak this and adjust it to a kind of an engineering side, it will make a little bit more sense. And they're like, oh, well, that's completely unexpected. We didn't see that one coming, but yeah, let's do that. That sounds good. And I mean, it's always take those things from your experience and you're going to find things that overlap. And that's something that's really been a core strength that we've used at Workmind, because we have varying backgrounds, the people that I'm working with there. And it's always the best idea wins, which I'm sure everyone's heard people say that. And usually when somebody says that, I start gagging on the back of my throat because I'm like, oh goodness, one of those people. But what I've found, though, is if you really embrace that of it doesn't matter where the idea comes from, if it is a good idea, take the idea on its own merit. And that's where we've really worked with. And it's why I love having a diverse background with a lot of different things I've done. But I love surrounding myself with people who have the same.
Yeah, so well said. Sara, I see this in, obviously I have the great pleasure of interviewing so many brilliant minds and successful entrepreneurs. This is a trait that I see so frequently, is that they don't confine certain lessons and certain strategies and insights into these boxes. They take from all facets of not just business, I find from all of life. And it's funny, if people could have eavesdropped into our off-air conversation, you and I were talking about languages and cultures and things like that, because those are the things that make us human. And I would imagine in your industry, in your workspace, I would imagine that it's a breath of fresh air for people who are thinking, oh, Sara and her team, they're going to walk in here and they're going to want to talk about operational agents and technology and AI, and they don't expect the human aspect of what you bring to the table. So first, I want to give you huge kudos for that. And obviously, I do want to nerd out with you a little bit on the air about those operational agents, because piggybacking off of that nonlinear theme, I feel like everyone is just really starting to get honed in on the same type of AI conversations. And I feel like that mass conversation is starting to conflate automation with AI, with agentic workflows and processes, with just generic prompting and LLMs. There's so much to unpack here, Sara, but that's why you're here. So start unpacking all this stuff for us and talk to us about what actually matters when it comes to operational agents and how to make an impact in a business.
No, and this is a big thing you have is, let's start unpacking some of this, because an LLM is just, the way I break it down for people who are very non-technical is it's just a brain. It's not even connected necessarily to anything. It can just process information in context and give you good information back. It can help you process. I mean, I've worked with, obviously I've been writing a lot of documents and stuff. And so I use GPT and other LLMs constantly, depending on what I'm working on, to help me refine it and make sure that it's solid and what I need it to be. But they're dumb. I always laugh and be like, they're going to take over the world. I'm like, no, they really can't do anything besides what you ask them to do. They're not really autonomous. Where we start running into things is then you have the traditional coding and the traditional way of doing automations, which is we say, if this happens, then X happens. And again, going back to this conversation of linear, that's a very linear way of thinking about it. Where the power comes in, where operational agents come in, and where agentic AI comes in, is when you can take the power of the old coding and the old automation systems. If this happens, then do this, and you put it with an LLM, it means rather than having to be linear, the LLM can be trained and have enough context that it can actually say which linear path you need to take. And it can help make a good decision, which in order to do that before was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of lines of code. You can now cut your code base down dramatically if you use the LLM at the right point to help make the correct directional call. And that's a lot that goes into Workmind. What we're doing, if you're looking at the actual technology, is really an agentic AI. But we've switched it to operational agents because the other problem that's happening in the industry right now is a lot of people are putting up a pretty front end, and then they are slapping an LLM on the back end with a prompt, and they're calling that agentic AI. And that's not agentic AI. That is just a wrapped LLM. And so it's really important as you start looking at this and as the industry continues to grow, because I mean, right now they talk about the AI bubble. And I agree, it's going to burst. And it's going to burst because you don't really have legit agentic AI in a lot of these companies that are coming in. You have a lot of people who've just taken an LLM and wrapped it. And what the wrap is it's a special prompt that they use to have it behave a certain way for them. And that's great. And there's things that you can do with that, but that's not real agentic AI. And it doesn't usually give you a lot of value because you don't have the code and the actions there to actually do something with it.
Sara, I'm really appreciative of the way that you call that out, because so much of us, the conversation about AI is really controlled by the big players, the OpenAIs, the Anthropics, the Googles of the world, and because that's what the average mainstream user of large language models sees. And so when we hear experts such as yourself talk about agentic AI, I know how many people turn straight to it's something, a conversation I get into at coffee shops all the time is people are like, oh yeah, I've tried ChatGPT agent before. And I feel like ChatGPT, they tried to enter the agentic game with their whole agent workflow. I feel like even they stopped pushing it though, because it wasn't as powerful and didn't do the things that the market hoped it would unleash. Give us some real tangible examples of what agentic AI is and what it can do, because I just feel like it's a fluff word right now. And I know that you're in the real world with real life customers, real life businesses doing those things that are the future of what the use cases will look like.
Well, let me give you an idea, because right now we have a product in beta. It's called Quotester. And what Quotester does is it connects to a proposal system, right? And in that proposal system, it actually extracts all of the data from the back end. And with that data from the back end, what it does is it's able to say, okay, so this is all their bid types, this is all of their categories, this is all of the line items, these are all the fields that need to be filled out. And then what we're able to do, and that's all being extracted, that's not being done with an LLM, that's being done with good, legit, well-written code. So what we run into with this with Quotester is we've pulled all that information through good coding, we are able to process it, and then we're able to have a conversation with the client and say, okay, so here's the information we have. Now help us understand, what are your rules? What are the things you need to train people on? Because what happens is these proposal systems are phenomenal, and a lot of them are very complex and they're very detailed because they need to be. You need to be able to capture all this minute information, especially like in a franchise setting, because that's part of their secret sauce, is making sure things are bid correctly. But the training on it is so complex sometimes that it takes people a very steep learning curve to get there. But with Quotester, what they can do is they can sit there, we extract all this information, they go through it and say, these are the rules. Like, for example, if I was doing a lawn mowing thing, business, the company would come in and say, okay, we've got the measurements of the yard, and then because of how they set things up with Quotester, they'd be like, oh, cool. Do they have any pets? Is the lawn flat or is it inclined? Things like this that sometimes somebody new wouldn't even think to ask. But you get those qualifications, and then they say, okay, which services are they requesting? Oh, well, they're requesting a lawn mow and a yard trim. Okay, we would recommend also here that you potentially recommend doing a fertilizer treatment. And these are rules and things that they can put into Quotester that makes it really easy, and it's a very good conversation flow on the configuration side. And then as somebody's actually at the job site bidding, and they're giving all the information in, the agent's recording it, then the agent's able to go through and review it. And then that's where you use the LLM, is the LLM is able to process that conversation, put it in context, and double check and then we have some code rules that are there to help double check these things. And then it's able to make good, solid recommendations on what they need to be doing and what information might be missing. Then from there, they're able to review the quote basically in Quotester. They say yes, and it goes straight into their proposal system. And in a lot of these cases, what we're seeing with our beta test is that when all this is going well, they are able to basically fill this out in the interview with the homeowner when they're there. And then they're able to have the homeowner sign it before they even leave the house. But that is agentic AI. A lot of it's good coding, but you use the LM at the right time in the right place to add value. It should not be LM first. It should be good process first with LLM augmenting.
I really appreciate the way that you articulate that, and especially the way that you approach that, because Sarah, so many of my conversations here, obviously we're very early on in the new year, but I'm finding more and more that innovators such as yourself in the space are really stepping into that. I love this term that is coming up now, is that human in the loop, is that this isn't about replacing humans. In fact, it's going to allow the service agents, going to allow the account managers to be even more human with the people that they serve. What's your take on this? Because it sounds like that sort of solution that you've brought into the world, like, this is cool because it's not the future. This is already in existence thanks to you and the team at Workmind developing this and bringing this into the world. What's your take on that more macro level conversation about replacement versus human in the loop versus the fact that this is a tool that we get to use to be better at all the things that we're doing?
Well, the fun thing is human in the loop's been around, that concept's been around for years since this even started. I think IBM's one of the ones who did their first NLU and thing about 20 years ago. And where we're sitting at is human in the loop is something that's critical, and it's something a lot of people miss. I laugh because I had somebody once talk to me about, well, they're going to pull all of our jobs. And I have a friend who he works in a web development company, and they legit did that. They fired 3/4 of the company and said, well, with AI now, you guys don't need this many people. And what happened is a catastrophic failure. Because where AI really thrives and where these things really thrive is augmenting people's capacity. So what this means to me is that the job market slows down on hiring new people, not we are letting off and firing people. And why this matters is because AI is great, but as I said earlier, AI, like, these LLMs are not smart. And they can make some really silly mistakes. And because of that, I'm a big proponent for, you need to make sure that you have proper oversight. It's like with Quotester, that's one of the reasons why we review the quote with them before we send it to their proposal agent. It's also why once it gets sent to the proposal agent, we don't instantly send a trigger for that proposal system to email it out to the client. The person needs to take a second, and they need to make sure that they've double checked everything and there isn't something that got missed or something that got marked the wrong way. Because as a human, we need to be able to take that step back, and we have to have that ownership. But where I see AI coming in is AI is going to take out a lot of this grunt work. And we're going to find that a lot of these people who were doing the grunt work are going to be basically promoted in a lot of ways with their skill set to a middle manager. One of the things that I smile about is my team. We have a back-end developer, a front-end developer, and our CTO who does a bit of both. Our back-end, just with my CTO and my back-end developer, do over 70,000 lines of code a week. And how that happens is that we are utilizing AI to help with some of our coding, but what that process really looks like is that we properly manually scope everything. We feed it properly to the AI, the agentic AI that is helping with the coding. And then we are reviewing the code, which cuts down the time for getting this built out by, what would it be? By probably 2/3. I mean, to be fair, Workmind was founded in August. We had funding and we had our developers hired the 1st of November. We went into beta the weekend of Thanksgiving. And that's all possible because of Agentic AI, with us utilizing it properly. But I mean, that is not the AI is just building code and we're not checking it. That is the AI is building within parameters. A human is reviewing and testing, as well as there are things that we don't have the AI build. It's stuff that has to be built by a person. And that's the proper thing. Is AI is very much built to be an augmentation. It is made to be something to make it so you can be better at what you do and you can focus on those human elements that need to be focused on. But yeah.
Sarah, I want to go here with you because it's something that really stands out to me about the way that you've so intentionally laid out the approach that you all have at Workmind, and just knowing that you guys work with so many different franchise groups and that those are models that are tried and tested. They are models that have withstood the test of time, but they're also models that are going to be challenged in this new AI world. And so what really stands out to me leading up to today's conversation is your personal attitude towards disruption and the fact that you to minimize disruption in this era. And I think 2026 is going to be a disruptive year for a lot of industries, especially. And so I think that the smartest approach that I've seen is that approach that you're adopting is, hey, let's get you into this new era because things are going to change and they're going to change quickly, but let's do it with minimal disruption to the way that you're currently operating. Talk to us about that, because I know how many people are resistant towards change, and it feels like, I mean, you've got a big smile on your face. You love change and you love innovation, but you also recognize the realities of, hey, let's do this without the pain that necessarily comes with change.
Well, this is the thing you run into, because I mean, I spent the last 7 years building agents and then coaching Fortune 500 companies on adoption and how to get things automated on their side. And what I found is if you come in and say, we're going to take everything out and we're going to replace it with this, it doesn't matter if what you're replacing it with is top line and going to completely revolutionize what they're doing. They're going to say no, because people do not like change. But what you can do is if you can say, look, and this is how we're designed. We're not a rip and replace. The way I put it is we're basically forming a nervous system for your systems that already exist. We're going to come in, you're still going to use your systems the way that you've been using them, but instead of the people, like the person going out and doing quotes for you, having to master your quote software, your proposal software, instead they just need to have a conversation and they just need to double check it's accurate and they just need to send it. That's it. You don't need to train them on all the drop-down fields. You don't need to train them on the nuances of the system. You just need to make sure that they understand enough of how to get the right information for you. And then we'll put it in for you and just use what you're using. That's fine. And by taking that approach, and that's where we're getting, I've got several referrals coming in. We have two industry leaders in the franchise world, Clienteller and Kavinci, who have both partnered with us already. We're already getting a very solid pipeline, but the idea is because it's not we're forcing them to change or we're telling them what they're doing is wrong. What we're doing is we're saying, keep doing what you're doing great, and then let's move forward and let's make this better. A lot of this comes from, and again, that non-linear view, my families are all academics. My dad has his PhD, my mother has her master's. I worked in the academic field for a while. And when you get a PhD, one of the things that they always talk to PhD candidates is when you write your dissertation, you want to make sure you're adding an inch of knowledge. Like you may have found a foot, but for your dissertation, add an inch because it's defensible. And then after you get your dissertation and you have your PhD, then find ways of adding that foot in an inch at a time. If you are so disruptive that you are destroying work paths, if you are making it so that things are completely changed, people aren't ready for it. You need to make sure, because I remember, what was it? I think it was about 7 or 8 years ago, there was an advertisement for this new watch and it was going to be so cool. And they did a Star Trek reference with somebody talking into it and it was going to be so awesome. And it completely failed. 2 years later, they relaunched, and I mean, I have a Galaxy watch on my wrist right now. Other people have it because the market wasn't ready. They needed a few more steps before they took that leap. So one of the things I'm a fan of is we are being disruptive in some ways, but we're being surgically disruptive. We're making those inch at a time changes, which as they continue to grow, you're going to start finding that we can be more and more disruptive. But the other thing is we want to make it so that it's a low risk disruption. That's the other piece you have. A lot of people want these companies to make these major changes, and some of this stuff is very good. Do not ever get me wrong. I'm very impressed with some of the things my colleagues are coming out with. But the other problem you have is if you get so disruptive, somebody doesn't know how to work with it, and it's not something that's super intuitive based on their previous experience, they're not going to adopt it. It doesn't matter how revolutionary it is. So with Workmind, our mindset is always, how do we add that next inch? Which is phenomenal. I mean, our products are going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to evolve. And I'm sure 4 or 5 years from now, we're going to be in a spot which is going to be very different from where we are now, because we should be. That's evolving. And that's adding the inch at a time. But it is something that I do find with, as I've talked to other entrepreneurs and I've gone to other conferences, is sometimes people get so caught up in we want to move them that foot that they don't realize that operationally you have to give them an inch at a time.
Yeah, so well said. I love the way you articulate that. And that real life example, it makes me think of, I don't know if you remember Google Glass. Google Glass was incredible technology, just way ahead of its time. And now we see Ray-Ban and Meta have teamed up in different ways. Apple obviously has their versions of augmented reality. We're starting to see it come to the mainstream, which I always think about, how much the Google Glass team feel? Because they're like, we had that technology literally at least 10 years ago, and it was decently affordable back then. I can't remember what the price point was, but Apple Vision Pro is $3,500, for example. So Google was doing the right thing, just the market wasn't ready for it, which, Sarah, it leads me to this next question. I've never asked anybody this, but I feel like you're the best person to ask this to, is talking about market readiness. Who's going to push the envelope here? Is it going to be the market as customers saying, hey, we're ready, like we want you to have these AI type of solutions? Is it companies that are going to lead the way? I'll share this with you as a business owner, is that I get a lot of pitches, especially being the host of a podcast, is I get pitches in my inbox every single day. And somewhere along the last 12 months, I saw this drop off, thank goodness, is that there was a time where people were saying, oh, we are proud to say, a social media agency, we are proud to say that we do not use AI. And in my head, I was thinking, well, if I'm going to hire, you better use AI. I have mountains of podcast transcripts. There's no way a human's going to plow through all of that. That seems very inefficient to me. And so as a customer, I actually want companies that I work with to be leveraging AI. Obviously, I'm on the quicker side of tech adoption. Sarah, what's your take on it? Because you work in such interesting industries and have an interesting background. Who's going to be pushing the envelope there? Who should be pushing the envelope there?
So it's going to be a mix of two things. It's going to be a little bit of both. And that's where you're going to have a happy push with that, is if it's symbiotic. So where we get our ideas at Workmind is we legit interview companies and people we want to sell to and say, what do you need? And I don't say, what do you need? I always love it when I get into a conversation and say, so what should you automate? I'm like, that is a terrible question. When I talk to a company and I'm trying to figure out potential things that we can do, my question I always start with is, what do you do on a daily basis that makes you feel like a trained monkey? And as soon as I ask that question, I get overwhelming responses, and I love it, because what ends up happening is, as we ask that question, we start finding those little pain points. And so from that side, it's customer driven. They're giving me the data, they're giving me the information. And then where the company side comes in is you need to be somebody who's intelligent enough and understands the technology enough to say, this is the pain point. How can we apply this technology in an innovative way to address that pain point? One of the things I laugh at is I feel like every week I see a new AI agent for a sales rep, or I see a new AI agent for marketing. And I'm like, done and tried. We have 50 of these things on the market. If you want to bring in a company, you want to be doing something new, find something new. Go talk to somebody and use your imagination. Because what's happening is it's driven by both sides, but it can only be successfully driven if both sides are legitimately talking to each other. Going back to the Google Glass for a minute, they were ahead of their time, but the problem they ran into is somebody sat down and said, this is a great idea, and they developed this idea in a vacuum. They didn't talk to the people who are going to be using it, from my perspective. They did not talk to people who would be using it. They didn't talk to people about ways that this could be applied. They didn't go say, this is our niche market. What they did is they said, this is a really cool idea. Let's deliver it and let's throw it out to the market. And this is what I see a lot of companies doing. But what makes a lot more sense is you don't want to develop in a vacuum. It's one of the reasons why we went into beta so early, because we did our interviews, we had our conversations, we had a company, we have a franchise who we're working with right now. They've been fantastic. They're piloting this for us. They're having a lot of fun with us doing it, but they've given us some very critical feedback. But we've picked them because they were our ideal client. We built up our client profile. We made sure we had it. We had talked to multiple companies. We pulled them in. We've worked with them, and we've gotten phenomenal responses. And with the product we're building and we're going to be releasing to the market within the next month is a lot better than the product, and is a lot more meaningful to the market than the product that we had initially developed from our interviews with them and had scoped out. And this is where that comes in. It's a two-way street. We have to have the customer and the companies working together, and the companies need to be really smart about how they're approaching it. Because you cannot be developing in a vacuum. You cannot be saying, I think this is a great idea, so we're going to push this out. You need to make sure that you are aligned with what the customer base is, and you've helped identify and help highlight that need to the customer so they are ready to accept it when it comes.
Oh, Sarah, that is some very tangible business advice for all of us in our own businesses, whether we're talking tech, whether we're talking AI or automation, or just straight up service businesses. Holy cow, that makes me want to go out and just talk to potential prospects for the next week, and the people who I want to serve. It just makes me want to know them. But I really love that caveat that you threw in there about we can't just ask them, what do you want? I love that Henry Ford quote of, if I would have asked my customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse. That's also why we are the innovators. That's also why we are the experts. Hear them out, understand their pain points, and start to shape what a solution looks like. So Sara, I knew we'd have some fun on the air, and I'm very excited to see how you answer this last question, because it's super broad. You can take it in any direction you want, and that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys, and also knowing that you're one of us, you're a fellow entrepreneur, what's that one thing that you want to leave them with today?
So the thing I'd recommend to anybody is, one, find something you're passionate about. It needs to be something that you really do care about, and then make sure other people do care about it as well. That it sounds funny, but make sure you find that market. Make sure that you really are saying, this is what I care about, this is what I want to do. And I have found people who care about this too, and they're willing to talk to me. And my other thing is, we need to make sure, Mark Twain said it really well, which is, if God meant us to talk more than we listen, he would have given us 2 mouths instead of 2 ears. And I might butcher that quote, but I like that premise a lot. When you go in and you are looking at an idea, and you're looking at the merits of the idea, you have to make sure that you're listening. You have to take in all the feedback. And sometimes it's feedback that's going to be almost personally painful to you. One of the things, I was on a call with, it was an investment group. They were doing a call, and they were talking to some people, and I was watching this lady, and she was very adamant and very passionate about what she was doing. But she didn't understand that in order to be a successful business, you also have to have a market that is as passionate as about it. And you also have to be able to step away and look at from it without it being a personal attack. A very good example of that, again, going to my diverse background, is I was working with an author who was getting published. And he sent me to a conference to go meet with some people for him. And I was at the conference, and you had a lot of the top publishing firms from New York there. And you had their head editors at this conference, and it was fantastic. And this lady, they did a thing, it was an open forum, where you could read the first page of your book to, I think it was 4 of the top publishers in New York. And this one lady read it, and it was a very personal thing, and it was tied to, it was a memoir, and it was tied to some of these horrible events that she lived through as a child and how she overcame them, which is a fantastic premise for a book. And the publisher answered and gave her some very direct critique on why she would not publish her book from that first page, and what she could do to change it. And she went away and stepped away from that, and she was crying in the hallway saying she was a horrible, evil person. How dare she say that to me? This is my personal experience. And I'm like, well, if you were in a group therapy and she said that, yes, but you are trying to present this to the world, and her job is to help you present this to the world. So as we go to companies, and as you're an entrepreneur, and as you're pitching, and as you're talking with people, and you're doing research, and please do research, please talk to people before you try to jump into this. You need to be able to take that feedback, and you need to take a step back and realize, I am presenting this as a company that I either want somebody to invest in, or I want somebody to buy my product. And if I'm talking to somebody who I'm targeting for that, and they give me some harsh reality checks, I need to step back, and I need to be able to not take a personal offense to it, but really take a look back and say, how can I adjust to make this better and incorporate what they're saying?
Oh, Sara, that's the real stuff. Maybe not the advice that we want, but certainly the advice that we need. And I'm so appreciative of you bringing that real stuff to all of us here today in this conversation. And honestly, Sara, I could sing your praises all day long, because I think you are brilliant in so many different ways. And I feel like we got so much of that shine as an example here during our conversation, because of how frequently you pull from your past life experiences, how frequently you pull from all the different facets of life and business that you've picked up along the way. And it seems to me like you have an incredible ability to hold on to those lessons so that they can come back to serve you in those moments where you need them. So you're such a shining example of an entrepreneur who's doing really cool things innovatively, while also tapping so deeply into the marketplace that it is that you're serving. So for listeners who want to check out all the cool stuff that you're up to with Workmind, which I'm sure that if we have this conversation 6 months from now, there's going to be even more cool innovation. So for people who want to follow along, drop those links on us. Where should listeners go from here?
Awesome. Well, what we're going to do is we have our workmind.cloud, and I'd really recommend go through there. We also usually are pretty active on LinkedIn, and we have a blog going. So please go ahead, and I'd love you guys to come in, subscribe to our blog. We're going to be getting more in link with LinkedIn. It's been a little bit paused because we've been focused really heavily on that beta and getting it out. But probably in the next month, we should be having things out live, and it's going to be really, really exciting. I also will be presenting at the business show in Miami. So I'm looking forward to that, and it'll be a lot of fun. And I know you're based in that South area, so maybe we can meet up while I'm there. But yeah, it'll be really exciting. Yeah.
Sarah, I love that. Anytime I get together in person with podcast guests over coffee, that is me at my happiest. So 100% super excited to keep this conversation and this ball rolling. And listeners, you already know the drill. You have the chance to deepen your conversation and connection with Sarah as well, because we are dropping all of those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. I'm sure Sarah is not the only Sara Reece on the planet, so don't worry about trying to find her on LinkedIn. We're linking directly to her one and only LinkedIn down below in the show notes. So don't be shy to check out those links and click right on through. Otherwise, Sarah, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for having me. It's been a delight.